All right, so welcome everyone. Welcome to the FoodTech Mondays. This is going to be our fourth session. Myself today, as you know, the semi Hakim and my co-host Ivan Draganov from Dealroom. And today with us we have a guest speaker, Jean-Patrick Scheepers. If I pronounced it correctly, that would be great. If I not, I'm sorry. So welcome, Jean-Patrick JP. First off, before we dive in, which today's topic will be vertical farming, and we're going to talk about a lot of like data trends, what's happening across the globe, and what would be the potential of the sector. But before we dive into that, would you like to introduce yourself, JP, and then we can continue with our regular flow?
Yeah, I will try to make it very short. My name is Jean-Patrick Scheepers. I am a Dutch citizen born in Brussels and live in Istanbul. Basically, I'm a commercial engineer, studied all the time my own companies. And in 2013, I started a company called Urban Farm Company. So it's one of the pioneers of the sector in Belgium and France, where I was managing 10 urban farms on rooftops. And 1 year ago, with my partner Eric Dargent, we created Mycelium, which is an expert and consulting company that works for large corporations, cities, retailers, real estate promoters, to help them in managing and design their project in vertical farming.
Awesome. Well, welcome again, JP. And sorry for mispronouncing your last name. I'll learn it better. So Ivan, I'll pass the mic to you as usual. You have the floor.
Thanks, Semi. Well, as usual, I've prepared a couple of slides based on Dealroom data, and I wanted to present just to see what has been the appetite for vertical farming. Are you able to see my screen now?
Yeah, it's on.
Awesome. So, in this presentation, I'm going to talk about technologies that are bringing food in closer proximity to customers. And so what is vertical farming? There are three different categories out there. So hydroponics are the one growing plants without soil. And that one includes companies like Just Vertical and Up Harvest. The second one, aquaponics. So that's a closed system that's mimicking the natural environment. So it's growing crops, but at the same time it's connected to a fish aquarium, and it's all connected. So it's limiting the waste. And finally, we have aeroponics, which is basically misting the nutrients in the air, and that's how plants are being grown. The global vertical farming market is expected to reach 20 billion by 2026. It's expected to increase 2.9x since 2021. And behind this growth are the trends of cities growing bigger, climate change, and as well as the farmlands becoming smaller and smaller. And at the same time, startups focusing on vertical farms have benefited. So the collective enterprise value of vertical farming startups has increased 18x since 2016, and it has reached 11 billion. And although 11 billion might sound like a large number by itself, actually the vertical farming ecosystem is a tiny part of the entire food tech ecosystem, which collectively is valued at 1.1 trillion. And if you've, by the way, been part of the previous webinars, you would know that food delivery and grocery delivery are actually driving the value of the entire food tech ecosystem. And sorry?
Just a great plugin. Previous ones, yeah, please.
And this venture capital investment in vertical farming startups reached an all-time high last year of 835 million. And this year is already in a good start. In the first 2 months, 481 million has been raised already. But the majority of it, 400 million, comes from Plenty, a US-based company. What, however, is a little bit worrying is that if you look close on the chart, you would see that the blue shades are actually not increasing, and those are the early stage deals. So the volume or the value of early stage deals has not really increased, and the value is being driven by mega rounds, or rounds above 100 million. And by the way, the data is on Dealroom, and you can play with interactive charts and see the rounds in granular data. We are going to share the links later. Looking at the companies by stage, we see that half of the startups are actually at the early stages of funding. So 50%, 52% actually of the startups are at stage or early venture capital stage. And there have been several acquisitions and IPOs, but the majority of the startups are still at the stage of where they're figuring out the go-to-market strategy, funding their initial R&D, and trying to come up with smart ways to make money. And majority of the investment has been focused in the United States. So 78% of all the venture capital invested in vertical farming went into startups that are based in the US. Europe comes second with 18%, and then the rest of the world is with 4.2%. Which is, by the way, not to say that there are no companies working on vertical farming elsewhere. It's to say that some of them might be mature, so it's not the scope of the work I've done, or maybe the funding was not announced, so we couldn't capture it. It's also visible that the public markets are now having appetite for vertical farming startups as well. However, there has been some disappointment with the performance. So last year, 3 companies IPO'd, well-known companies, 2 of them in hydroponics, UpHarvest and Urban Grow, and 1 focused on aquaponics. But looking at the Google Finance data below on the charts, you can see that actually performance have been quite disappointing. And the reason for that is that those companies are struggling still to have sustainable unit economics and clear path to profitability. What is although interesting is that UpHarvest and Pontus are working on developing their own vertical farms, whereas Urban Grow is actually licensing the technology, and they're being they're acting more as a consultant and as a know-how on how to build farms. So those are 2 different business models, and I'm going to touch upon that later in the deck. And vertical farming uses more energy, but fewer fertilizers and pesticides. So there is a lot of literature out there arguing that actually vertical farming could be better for environment. So looking at the chart on the left, it's depicting the food waste by supply chain. And we see that 16% of food is being wasted on the farm, and 18% of it in restaurants, and 13% in groceries, in grocery and distribution. So potentially growing food at vertical farms brings first makes the supply chain much shorter, which limits the waste across the supply chain. But also because it grows plants in a controlled environment, make sure that the waste on the farm is much less. And almost half of the food is being wasted in the households. But this is again a webinar that we've done before on food waste, so go check it out. Looking on the chart on the right, it's looking at the distribution of CO2 emissions in different agricultural systems. And we see that actually open field agriculture comes on top as having the biggest impact in terms of CO2 emissions. And a majority of that comes from transportation. And it is because our farms are usually outside of cities. So it takes time to it takes energy and time and CO2 emissions to transport all of these goods. But also a big part of it are fertilizers and pesticides. Energy, though, is a much smaller component. Whereas if you look at green vertical farms, we can see that energy is the is the biggest component. And although the total CO2 emissions come at much smaller, because of these big energy components, there has been also a lot of literature arguing that we are not at the stage where vertical farms are better. And there has been different articles from back in the day, but also more recent, that actually argue that the energy use, the large energy use of vertical farms is a problem, and the jury is still out to decide actually the vertical farm. We are at the stage where vertical farming is actually better or not, and maybe because they are very capital intensive and dependent on hardware, it means we still need to develop a lot of the enablers, like the different lights, in order to reach a stage where it's much better and it can be quantified that vertical farms are better. So just to wrap it up, the business models and the underlying technology are yet to converge so that we enter the phase of productivity. So first, about technology, we have 3 different technologies competing, and they're competing to find which one can make money in a sustainable way, but also still the different setups. So is it in a warehouse, is it in a building, or is it just a small unit that can be easily customized, put in a store? Which of the 2 models is going to work better? And is it then trading directly, selling directly to consumers through an online store or through in-store equipments, or are you selling B2B and then letting the distributors sell to consumers? But as well as what is the revenue stream? Are you manufacturing the produce yourself or licensing the underlying technology and let someone else grow the fruits and the vegetables? But finally, I think we still need a lot of underlying technology, or so-called enabler of vertical farming, to develop in order to make the unit economics sustainable and help those guys in the space make money out of it. And this is it. As usual, all the data is available on foodtech.dealroom.co, and please subscribe to my newsletter to receive weekly insights on FoodTech.
Awesome.
That's pretty much it.
Awesome. Great, as usual. Awesome. So JP, I think this is going to be a really interesting session already, because I think because in our previous sessions we talked about like the potentials, but in first time ever actually in one subject we're actually in between like the potential, and it's great to hear your feedback now, JP, based on Ivan's presentation and your work in Mycelium, and what's your thoughts on the sector?
I think what Ivan showed us is very, very interesting, but we have very different perspective, because Ivan is analyzing data, so data that exists, and we are experts to try to predict what's going to happen. So it's very different point of view, and I agree with everything I saw. Of course, it's a very serious work. But effectively, it is a sector who is mutating, who is going to. So, of course, it's still raising loads of questions. When I started my job 8 years ago, I was really urban farming, growing outside, making links in the cities, making more cities more sustainable, green, etc. Very far from growing lettuce under a lamp. And I didn't understand why they were doing it. So I started to understand better. And 8 years later, nearly 10 years after, this sector started to make sense. But it's, of course, still a lot of discussion about it. But we believe at Mycelium that it is going to the sustainability. So let me share a couple of things. It was interesting when I was hearing Ivan, so give me the envy to show you this. Wait, I will make. So I will try to make it bigger. Okay, do you see it better? Yeah. So we kind of have same figures than Ivan, but it is a sector that is racing towards sustainability. It is not yet, but it will go. And of course, there is the pesticide free. That is very interesting point. But also, and we didn't talk about it, the less water. We are in vertical farming using 1% of the use of outdoor growing. So it's very, very little. And as we see that we are in an environment where you will have more and more problems with some countries of the world, which will have water problems, it is important, an important point. Of course, the local food production, less food waste. And the big point is, why do we use light to grow something when the sun is free? But we speak about land. If you think about Sweden, we have several plants in Sweden. They don't have this natural light most of the time because they are much north. So they're happy with any solution that will help grow food with a solution that will give them around the year production. So it is something very important. And of course, Ivan said that too. It's about the quality and the performance of the light, the LED. This sector was could start because LED arrived. Before it was not possible because it was too much hot with the conventional lights. Then the LED arrived, but the LED each year become better and better and better and better. So that will be the moment where they'll be more effective, and there will be a turning point in the market when it starts to be competitive. Another thing we speak about, okay, local. We speak about closer to the customer, but also there's something about being beyond organic, because it's a new category we see in the shops. Because in fact it's not organic, it's better than organic. You can have zero pesticides, zero food mice, more transparency. You don't need to wash them. So all those elements start to create kind of a new category in the shops. And what is very interesting is when you ask a plant to grow outside or in a greenhouse, you ask this plant to be to have several qualities to survive to a problem of light, to a problem of water, to a disease. But when you are in vertical farming, it's like pampering, putting in a 5-star hotel where you're just asking, grow nicely. But then you can ask this plant to have more concentration of vitamin or nutrients, or more taste, which is surprising for many people, because you can select plants that will be doing this. And what's happening for the moment is most of the vertical farming use seeds and seedlings from traditional agriculture because nobody still developed them for them. But there are huge research and development on bringing the right seeds and the right plants for vertical farming. The moment they're up the market, boom, because they will be totally different. So that's a very important point. And then we have to speak about customer experience. Showing things inside a shop can be interesting. So there are people who likes it. But the most important, I think it's this one, is that for the moment, when we speak to some clients, retailers, they said to us, we start to have problems of getting our vegetables and getting our food regularly. We have sometimes there's a weather problem, there's an environment problem, and here you can have a different point of view. And that's what is very interesting, is that the first time that retailers will have long-term contracts with producer because they know they can have this food on the reliable timing. And that is something really that's all what drives this market towards its future. So when we speak here, it's about retailers. There are 12 challenges. First, we speak about hydroponics, aeroponics, aquaponics. So I will not explain again. But what's the best technology to use? What is the challenge of choosing the technology? And most important is it is a very complex market, because it's not, we all speak about tech, but it's tech, agronomy, and operations. And that's the most important to understand. It is, in fact, an industry that grows food. And it's the people who are able to manage deep R&D to make it better, going through operations that will be perfect. And that is this wedding between the two that is difficult to make. And maybe I want to finish with a last. Okay, that's the kind of pattern, but I will show you another slide.
Must say this is really interesting. Really interesting.
Yeah.
It's wait, I will put it affichage plein écran. Wait, trying to put it. Voilà. So, is it coming? Yes. Oh, okay. So, what is complex to understand? It is you have 4 types of companies acting on the market, and they are playing with 3 roles: developing tech, selling tech, and farming. But when you see from outside, you see them all the same. You believe they are vertical farming, but in fact, some of them are pure tech companies. They just develop tech and sell the tech. At the other side, they are just farming companies. They are only producing food. And in between, you have those hybrid, the one who started everything. They develop the tech, they sell the tech, they farm, or they develop the tech for their own farming. So all these difficulties are makes the very difficult to understand this market, and you need a deep analysis to understand clearly what they are doing. But what is interesting is that what we believe. I will stop sharing. What we believe at in our company is that finally what's going to happen is that there will be like horticultural market. Like there will be people developing tech, there will be people aggregate tech, and there will be farmers. Within 5 years, it's you have a huge probability that it will be this market. So understanding all this is very difficult, and that's why, in fact, there's all these questions about is it good, not good. You have to see in 5-10 years.
This is really interesting, and based on the data that you shared, Ivan, I mean, you said 34% of the startups are actually in seed stage. I think it just really correlates with the various business models that can be actually done, and that might also take time for these startups to understand what would be actually for them to beneficial to move forward with, and it just makes sense because this is a technology still in progress. Maybe because it's been talked about for the last I don't know, maybe 10 years or so, we think that this is something already set and it can compete with open field agriculture, which that would be my in one point in this session will be question like where you would put your money in to the vertical or open field, but no, not now. But but yeah, my question to you actually, this is what I would love to understand on your both perspectives. These technologies, like both like within the vertical farming vertical, it has a amazing potential on the food security as well. As you talked about, JP, the water scarce lands or sunlight scarce lands, you can produce food without any outside of input, basically. But as we see, as Ivan mentioned, the market is still focused on US and maybe a bit in Canada, maybe a bit in China, but it's still not that widespread. How do you see the implementation over the course of this next years? Are we going to see more like in these ecosystems, or are we going to see like more access within the other places in geography as well? So yeah, that would be my question to you. Ivan, JP, who would like to go first?
So what we see with the clients who come to us, of course, the biggest market for the moment is North America, because they are very virgin about food production. When you eat in the States, food comes from very, very far, and there is a reason to do that. But what we see also is all the north of Europe, including Germany, is really going into it, because they really are missing those food security. The middle of Europe, where the weather is still a bit okay, it's a little bit less active. But UK, for example, because of Brexit, they don't have fresh food anymore, so they are also interested. And this company in Istanbul, they just raised $10 million, and they are starting indoor farming so it's a bit everywhere where it makes sense. And the make sense is very complex, because it's What's the weather? What's the price of the greens on the market? What's the price of energy? So you have to make analysis related to the location, related to type of greens, related to the price of water, price of labor. So it doesn't make sense everywhere, and maybe it will not ever make sense everywhere, but it's certainly one part of the solution, one part.
Excellent. And Ivan, your thoughts on this?
Yeah. So first, I think we've shown before a map of the world where we see that actually the countries which are having the highest cost of climate change have actually received very little agri-tech investments, and vertical farming comes into that. So far, the US and Europe have been in the lead just because they're technologically advanced, and because I think it's partially what JP said. It's about how expensive it is to produce foods. And in Europe, we saw in 2020 when there were labor shortages, how prices would hike because there are a lot of seasonal workers that would come in and that would work here in the fields. So having vertical farms, having automation in place means that the prices can be controlled, which in return means that you would have fresh foods for a good price that's stable, and you're less dependent on labor. And at the same time, there are countries in Africa and Asia where it would make a lot more sense to have a solution that's environmentally friendlier. However, at the moment, in my opinion, it's first labor is available and relatively cheaper, so it's more expensive actually to invest in capital rather than use labor. And second, startups that might be interested to that might have the technology might have difficulty actually going and working at those places because of business environments or other risks, or because the total addressable market is much smaller compared to the US and Europe.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's such a complex question because we speak, for example, when we speak about Sweden, they are talking about putting vertical farming close and with actual farmers, just as a source of revenue to complete when they cannot grow the rest of the world. And also this migrant and story where they say vertical farming also can attract new kind of people to this new world. There is a huge shortage of people on the market. Any vertical farming, you see, attracts loads of money. There is nobody to work. So there's like a tension on the HR market in those companies. So what is very fascinating is that it's changing a lot. It is full of wrong assumptions. People believe that, in fact, the assumptions is there 2 years ago when things have totally changed. You have to understand that they are, we see them high tech, but if you ever visit a vertical farming, you will be surprised by the still not yet high tech it is. For example, automation. Automation is very, very little. They are, I will not say, but some of the biggest companies in the world still put seeds in little pots. They are far from automation. All those stuff will come after. They are now starting to understand HVAC. That is so critical. So it is so many stuff will arrive. About, as I said, seeds. The moment the right seeds arrive in the market, it will be a game changer. And the big companies have huge R&D on that. So I think that what's going to happen the next 5-10 years will be very, very important because it's going to be totally change the game in this market. I understand why people, and I'm the first one to say that there are things that are not clear about profitability, about sustainability, but this market knows that its future has to cross profitability and sustainability. They have to mark the two, so they know it and they're working on it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, before we dive into the future, this will be, as will be our last section. But I think, like, whenever I hear the word urban farming, I just think of it like the urban setting turning into an agriculture. But when we are talking about, integrating these technologies, it just takes time. But on the other hand, we have a lot of verticals in open field agriculture. Why don't we have the same thing in urban agriculture? But we're expecting, startups doing actually all, as in control and automation and traceability would. But on the other hand, on the open field, we're seeing like sensors and drones and satellite data, and within different startups and different teams, whenever they grow, they add it in. But yeah, I mean, this is definitely up and coming. I think that's one of the keywords in here. But as we are, coming to our, final stage, what would be your future projections of the sector? As we talked about, the next 5 years, 10 years, even 20 or more. What would be your projections for the future?
Ivan, you're the man of data. Tell us.
All we have said, if I have to conclude it, we are bullish on we think that the sector has a lot of opportunity. And the way I imagine it, in the future, almost all type of crops would be grown locally. They would be available on demand. And I would think that maybe for some of them, we would see even kits where people can grow some of the crops at home. And I think the focus on sustainability is only going to grow as people are becoming really health cautious. And I think this is also correlates a little bit with the growing trend of personalizing foods, and also with weight loss, obesity, and fighting those type of diseases. And I think vertical farming and kitchen units to grow foods and have maybe even personalized seeds that you put in and grow only for you, so then you're getting the most vitamins. I think all of these trends combined are telling me that the importance and the value of this sector is going to increase. And JP, as you said, we're just at the very beginning of automation, and I think as automation increases, again, the value and the market share of such startups would increase.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And tagging along Q-commerce into the picture and efficiency, etc. It's just a massive ecosystem for sure. And JP, anything you would like to add as a sign off? Any last words, any comments?
Yeah, I think thank you first for giving us this opportunity to share all those visions. I think that, as I said, this sector will really go to this mix of profitability and sustainability, because it is its future. It has to go this way. And I think also that what we don't understand is that the tech is not yet invented. So there are so many stuff doing, but you have to understand that if you compare with a tech like app, in 6 weeks you can make a new one. But here you have long term, you have to grow things, and then you have to adapt and grow things. So the tech, you can be as good as you want, take times. So that's why it can be slow for people in tech, but it is normal for nature. We are still coping with nature. So the tech will arrive, will change the game. There will be things arriving on the seeds, on the energy efficiency, on the HVAC, all those stuff will really change the stuff. And I think, as we are still talking about a really little share of the market of food producing, even with this amount of money, it is so small, it's talking small percentage, it will continue to grow. I strongly believe when we see all the people we are talking with, which are huge corporate retail group that are talking, said, okay, no, it's serious. No, we sit on the table. And they are just starting to design a strategy. So imagine when those actors start to go into the market, it's going to be huge. So we really believe that, and the more there will be, the more it will be profitable, more it will be sustainable. So yeah, I think that what we are now is experiencing something that will really boom in the next years. And when we spoke to people, what I said to us too.
Awesome. I think I love the expression of saying, agri-food tech is similar like the internet back in the 90s and 2000s. I think we're still in the way early stage of these technologies. But again, yeah, absolutely. Well, JP, thank you so much for joining in to our session today, to our FoodTech Mondays, as we covered the vertical farming. As Ivan mentioned, all of these amazing data in depth will be available on Dealroom, as you will see the links within his presentation if you go back a couple of minutes. And thanks everyone watching in. And yeah, I mean, if you would like to, as Ivan mentioned previously, if you would like to check out our other sessions as we went deep in the food tech ecosystem as such, like food waste and online groceries, and also the cloud kitchens, which was our previous episode, you can check out on our YouTube channel. And definitely we would recommend you to joining to our Cook community, where you can also share previous questions with us before our sessions, and let us know any sort of like a topic that we would like to you would like us to discuss. So again, JP, thank you so much for joining in, and Ivan, always a pleasure. So take care, and thank you so much for people who are watching us. So have a great day. Take care.
Bye bye.